How we doing? We got audio now? Waiting for confirmation on the audio. Yeah? Anybody? And I lost video. Great. Um, okay. And what's George saying? What's George telling me? Alright, here we go. Alright, hi, my name is Josh Carter, and we're finally going to get around to this presentation on construction with aggregates principles. Just so you know, this is a presentation that's intended for people that already know their way around a job site, already know what they're doing as far as working in whatever trade they're trying to do. If you do have any questions about any general construction stuff, please feel free to ask them at the end. Well, with the technical difficulties, we might not have much time, but we'll see what we can do. But for the most part, this people already know what they're going to. They already know what they're doing. They just want to do it without state sanction. Most of this comes from either my own experience or from a couple of friends of mine. One who's a carpenter who works without a license and avoids permits whenever possible, and another friend of mine who was trying to do some work on his own house without permits and got busted. It turned into a real nightmare for him, and there's a lot of good lessons learned there. So hope this helps anybody out there. If it does, please know that donations are much appreciated. So basically, just like anything else, no matter what you're working with, you want to know what you're working with. You want to know what's going on, and know the land, the properties of the land that you're working on, things like that. And you can get a good idea of this, ironically, from the code books that you'll be expected to to conform to. Despite the fact that it's not necessarily ethical for the government to be forcing you to obey these codes or work within them, the fact of the matter is that most of the codes are sage advice. I wouldn't go around ignoring codes just for the sake of ignoring codes. You really need to know what's going to work for you and what's not. With that said, you also want to know the licenses that you're going to be expected, or that the law requires you to get. In some areas, you have to be licensed to do electrical work or plumbing work or what have you. Regardless of the fact of whether or not you want to actually get a license or get these permits, it's always a good idea, in my opinion, to know what is going to be expected of you, and so you're not caught unawares if you do run afoul of the state. Again, a good friend of mine, he had a real tough time when he got busted for working without a permit, and it basically left him with his house in half torn apart all winter, and it cost him hundreds of dollars in untold suffering because he didn't know what he was up against, and he wasn't prepared to deal with it when it did come up against him. So know that, and really, just like with anything else in agorism, black and gray markets, you really have to know what's you have to do a cost-benefit analysis on what the costs of getting caught would be, and so with that in mind. It's avoiding building permits. Well, we'll start with the easiest. The easiest is for things inside, say remodeling a bathroom or something along those lines. That's really the easiest. I know people that have done, they've redone all the piping in their house. They've redone entire bathrooms. They've installed new electrical boxes, upgraded their electrical service, everything, without without any sort of permits whatsoever, and it's real easy because it's inside. The fact of the matter is that a building inspector has no more right to come in your house and poke around than a cop does without a warrant. And actually, they can't just go off anonymous tips and just bust into your house unless they actually themselves see some work that should be permitted that isn't permitted. They have nothing to say to you. So, you know, if you just keep it all out of sight, all your materials, you know, just don't make it obvious that you're working on something that should be permitted, well then you just won't run into any problems, and that's really the easiest thing. Now, if you're working on something outside, you know, say you're doing a fence or something like that. In the city of St. Louis here, they want you to get a permit for a fence. And really what that is they just want their $50 or whatever the fee is going to be. You could probably literally draw up your plans on a napkin with a few measurements on there and tell them you're going to dig down to the frost line, and they'll say, okay, write a check and here's your permit. Obviously that's a little onerous, so when I built my fence in when I was 16 in my mom's backyard, I just tore the fence down and did it. Now I knew that this should have been permitted, so I made sure that I was going to get it all done in one day, therefore lessening the chance that an inspector is going to happen upon it. And I guess I should make the note now, you're really not going to get too many instances of inspectors themselves figuring out what you're doing and sticking their nose into it. They really just don't have the manpower. It's just like anything else. Most of the time, you're going to get ratted on by a neighbor or more likely a contractor, especially these days. That's what happened to my friend. He lives on a road that's not well traveled by inspectors, and even the inspector that came by told him, look, somebody called in on you. There's no way we would have noticed this. And he had half his house torn off when he was doing this. And the inspector still said, yeah, we never would have noticed except somebody called in on you. Why is Ethan trying to call me? Anyway. But anywho, the point is that if you're doing something outside, try and get it done in one day. If you can't get it done in one day, all said and done, I mean, going and picking up the materials, blah, 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 try and get as much done out of the view of, you know, anybody, you know, say, pick up the building materials the day before. Make sure all that's ready to go. Make sure you've got everything so that when it does come time to get out in the open and do everything in front of everybody, it's just bam, 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 get it done. And, you know, the inspector can show up later and you just tell him it was there all along and he must be mistaken if, you know, if he thought that work was done recently without a permit. You know, it's generally his word against yours. There's not a lot they can do to prove otherwise unless they actually see you doing it. Again, you should really, oh yeah, that was the point I was going to make. Contractors are going to be the ones to rat on you, especially licensed ones, especially union ones. Unions especially tend to be more strict about rules and regulations, things like that. And when they see somebody out there making money not following these rules, not following these regulations, they tend to get envious and they will ruin your day by calling the inspector in on you. That's just normal operating procedure from them. It's something you got to watch out for. Like I said, my buddy, he happened to be living at living on a street that at the end of it there was a lumber yard. So that's probably what happened. Is some contractor was having a bad day, maybe lost out on a bid to somebody, saw that there was work being done without a contract or without a permit, and boom, they called in, and next thing you know, my buddy's got an inspector calling up his ass and making him leave his house in shambles for the entire winter. The other thing is, once they tell you to stop work, now you've got to go through this whole permitting process where you have to make up your drawings, you have to do this, that, and the other, and these drawings have to be approved, and this, that, and the other before you can even get back to working on your house. So getting halfway started and then getting shut down could be one of the worst things that could ever happen to you. So, and, again, most of it's going to be somebody turning you in. So another thing to keep in mind is just to simply not talk about the work that you do. Whether it's in a bar, talking to buddies, you never know who might overhear and, think, oh, well, I'm going to call in on this buddy. Like, again, in this economy, you got a lot of contractors that aren't working every day or aren't working as much as they'd like to be. And if they're sitting at a bar, just sulking on that, and they hear somebody talking about how they're working without a permit or just working, and they know you're the type of guy that doesn't like to do permits or what have you, then that could be a real liability for you. So again, just keep it to yourself, keep it between you and your customer, and that should really go for any type of business. It's nobody's business but the people, the person providing the service and the person buying the service or goods, or what have you. Beyond that, there will be times when it's just impossible to avoid getting a permit. If you're on a main road and you're doing something just totally obvious, like I said, my friend, he literally tore out a couple walls, tore out most of his floors. His house didn't have central air, so he's putting all that in. He was doing extensive work, and it's just plainly obvious from the road that that's what he was doing. And obviously permits are required to be posted within sight of the road, so anybody could drive by and see that A, you're working, and B, you don't have a permit. If that's the case, there still are ways to minimize the cost to you. You've got well, first off, you got say you want to do electrical work, but you're not a licensed electrician. Hopefully you know a licensed electrician that could sign off on your paperwork. Generally, the person that is signing off on the work, that has their signature as a licensed electrician or plumber or whatever on the work, doesn't actually have to be there when the inspector comes to look at it. So as long as it's A, up to code, and B, there's a licensed signature on there, you should be good to go. That can save you some money. You might have to flip your buddy a few bucks to sign the piece of paper for you, but at the end of the day, it's still going to be better than wasting your time getting some license to do something that you already know how to do. You don't actually have to have your buddy, your licensed electrical buddy, do the work. Just have them sign the piece of paper. Same thing goes for drawings. One thing my friend ran into when he was redoing his house was he got his drawings together to get his permits after they shut him down again in the middle of winter, and he said he went back a good probably 6-7 times before they approved his drawings, and each time it was just some bureaucrat, someone who'd never actually worked on a job site and never actually knew which codes made sense and which codes were just kind of superfluous or onerous. They didn't care. That's not their job. Their job is not to make sure that your house doesn't fall down. Their job is to obey this book. So keep that in mind, and keep in mind what he learned is as soon as he got a architect friend of his to basically take his drawings, redraw them, and then put an architect stamp on it, they were approved immediately. So that can save you a lot of time and effort, headache, by just having a licensed professional put their stamp on it, and because that's how the state operates. They really just want to see, they're mercantilist minded. As long as you've got this little piece of paper behind you, you must be legitimate, and they'll let you do it. Also to keep permit fees down, if you're doing this as a business and working for customers, generally permit fees are based on how much the total job cost is. And in this way, if you're working with somebody that that understands the advantages of doing things the agorist way or the counter-economic way, you can really you can basically negotiate with them to where you just write up the bill for the material costs plus maybe a little bit of labor, and say you're doing a favor for a cousin or a friend or some such, and then later on they cut you a check for the labor as a gift or what have you. But as long as it's not on the actual permit that the cost was so much, the permit costs will be low, which will make your customer happy, because at the end of the day they're the ones paying out of pocket for these costs. So With that in mind, you also want to keep any payments that you receive below $1,000. Whether it's if you have a bank account, especially, you don't want to be doing a lot of deposits over $1,000 because these are tracked by the feds. On the other hand, even if you don't have a bank account, it'll be tracked on your customers' end, and it'll cause them problems if there's a lot of these withdrawals for, or checks issued for $1,000 or more than $1,000, et cetera, et cetera. Just another way to stay under the radar. Now, there was one thing that was suggested to me that I don't know that I'd necessarily recommend myself, but I'll throw it out there in case anybody might find it useful, is getting a fake permit, or not even necessarily fake, but an old permit that you've gotten before. Just keep that piece of paper around and stick it up in your window to kind of fool anybody that might be wanting to, spy on you and see if you've got any work going on that's not permitted. That will fool contractors, I would think, because they're just going to be driving by and they'll see the work and they'll see a piece of paper in the window and say, oh, well, he's got a permit, and drive on. But that will not fool a inspector, because generally there's one inspector or very few inspectors for a specific area, and if that inspector knows he didn't give you a permit and he sees a permit on there, he's going to wonder what's going on, and you get yourself in a lot of trouble. And this is why I don't personally recommend this, but I figured I'd throw it out there because it was recommended to me. Again, it's all about cost-benefit analysis. What are your risks of getting caught? What are your risks? What are the damages that are going to be done if you do get caught? And how much money do you stand to make by trying to get around it? And how does that all boil down? Beyond that, as far as working without a bank account as a business, I guess this could apply to a lot of different small businesses, but generally, if the easiest way to do it is simply ask for personal checks, or first and foremost, you could do it cash or barter, and that solves your problem right there. But barring that, if somebody really wants to write you a check, again, make sure that any check is under $1,000, and make sure that it's from a local bank. And then you can literally just drive to their bank and have it cashed there. You may pay a small fee, but if it's worth it to you to pay that fee instead of having a bank account, so be it. If you do run into somebody that happens to bank out of state for some reason, or doesn't have a accessible bank, money orders work. Again, you're going to pay a small fee to or maybe an exorbitant fee to have it cashed, but for some people that's better than having a bank account in the first place. So keeping all that in mind, is there anybody in the chat room? Am I seeing this chat room right? Doesn't look like I got anything going on in here. Are there any questions anybody's got? Okay. Alright. I know there's something's got to be going on wrong here. How do I get into this chat room thing? Seems like this was working before. Let me check something. Okay. Now I see the chat. Yeah. Anybody got any questions? On just about anything. Anything unclear? It's Ethan's fault. Everything's Ethan's fault. We know this. What do you think of people laying out their tools in the hardware store parking lot to say you are ready to work? I don't understand the question. I don't know. I just really, I'm not sure what you're asking there. I've never actually seen anybody lay out their tools in a hardware store parking lot. I guess, could you be more specific? Hmm? Um, yeah, how's the best way to advertise when you're not licensed? Generally word of mouth. Or uh, yeah, generally word of mouth, or I see a lot of people just kind of sticking up little homemade signs in right of ways, things like that. Same place you'd see like political signs or anything like that. Um, just something on there with your phone number. I wouldn't advertise that you're not licensed. Again, I'd keep that between you and the customer. I have seen some people, they'll have two sets of prices. They'll have one set for, if you want to do it the permit way and get everything licensed, it's going to cost you this. Or if you want to do it in the black market or gray market, it's going to cost you this. Um, yeah, no, I haven't been to California. Uh, you know, but okay, yeah, if that's how some people find home repair people, I could see that. Yeah, just kind of going to a hardware store and kind of standing out there saying, "Hey, I'm ready to work." I could see that. Yeah, I've heard of, especially undocumented workers in America. I've definitely heard of that happening. It doesn't happen a lot in St. Louis, not that I've seen, but if that's what you kind of have to make your own judgment based on if they seem competent, what the prices are, if if they know what they're talking about and they've got the tools for the job, I should go for it. Any other questions? Do I have some customers that I've used for references? I don't personally. I've never. I mean, I've done some odd jobs on the side, um, but I've never tried to actually make a business out of it. I've got a friend who I would think he has plenty of references like that, and I think that's how he gets most of his work is through word of mouth. And he also happens to be a local musician with a relatively popular local band. So he just happens to know a lot of people, and gets a lot of work that way. Uh, I would not recommend putting wires inside of pipes, much less so you don't lose water pressure. Just so everybody knows, don't do that. Are there any other questions? Any anything you're wondering just about construction in general, or agorism in general? Sure. Why not? Yep, like Charles said, that's basically how it goes, is word of mouth. I think that works a lot of ways for contractors in general. I mean, I worked for a concrete resurfacing contractor for 5 years, and most of our jobs came through references, or the neighbors saw it, or family members came over, or we did a commercial job and customers would come in to that business and say, hey, where'd you get that? And that's how we get it. Just in general, in construction, I think word of mouth is the best way to get business. Advertising works. It can, we can get leads off of home shows, things like that, but most of it was word of mouth. Do we have owner build permits here? Yes. If you want to do an improvement to your house, you generally have to get a permit for it. If it's anything structural, anyway. There are a few municipalities in St. Louis County that want you to get a permit for anything. Like I said, I work for a concrete resurfacing contractor, and we very rarely had to get any sort of permits whatsoever. But even working in other people's houses, but there was one municipality that we had to go into and get a little $20 permit just to do any sort of work whatsoever, and that will apply to homeowners too, in my experience. Basically anything, anything in the St. Louis area anyway, anything that a contractor would need a permit for, the homeowner would also need a permit for. Well, let's see if I got anything more in my notes here. Again, basically just don't piss off the neighbors. Don't talk to union contractors. Just be friendly and keep to yourself, and most things will work just fine for you. Yes, if some owners insist on permitting, that's fine. Well, I guess that's up to you whether or not that's in line with whatever you're doing. But yeah, having them get the permit and then you doing the work is the way to go if they really insist on getting a permit. They can totally do that, and that way you don't have to work with the inspectors. Make them deal with the inspectors if they really want to. Lauren asks if I buy insurance in case a worker gets hurt. Well, generally, in my experience, this only works with on like an individual working as an individual, or maybe bringing on a friend, things like that. So no. Generally, insurance isn't necessarily. I mean, you get your own health insurance, what have you, but yeah. Yeah, that's half second before you hit the ground, you're fired. That's one way to look at it. It's not the most ethical, but in the unlicensed business, it might be how it goes. And honestly, I've seen licensed contractors work that way, or at least claim to. Workman's comp gets expensive. So, yeah, Kent Hastings made a good point. I guess I should talk about that a little. Is just you can really, some people that aren't comfortable with, the idea of agorism or counter economics or doing things in a gray market, just kind of point out to them how, it gives them more flexibility. It'll save them money and permitting fees and, just time. Any time that you have to spend dealing with these regulations or, regulators or inspectors, whatever, or conforming to other codes, that's just going to add it onto their bill. So, yeah. Counter economics saves money. Try and explain it like that. And it makes things flexible. If if municipality wants to tell you what you can and can't do with your property in terms of what you can do in particular areas and zones and things like that, excuse me, just tell them, hey, look, I'm not getting a permit to begin with. They don't have, what they don't know won't hurt you. And that's the overriding concept in a lot of it, is what they don't know won't hurt you. And again, if you foresee a time when you may have to get, some sort of government approval, like I said, if you're selling a house or renting it out. I personally don't know of any way to get around things like that. So if you know that you're going to run into something like that, you want to be a lot more attentive to what the codes are, and even if you don't think that they're necessary as far as the actual integrity of your work or the functionality or aesthetics of it. Got a comment here about there's also aesthetic issues. Sometimes code makes things look pretty junky, depending on trying to reconcile code with existing infrastructure can make things either prohibitively expensive or look ridiculous. And sometimes there's a perfectly safe, perfectly reasonable way to to work what you want to do into your existing whatever you're working with, and then it's perfectly safe, but it's not up to code. And you can explain that to people too. Again, you really have to know what you're doing and make your own judgments. And obviously, whatever your customer is comfortable with. Any other questions? Let's see what else I got in my notes. Yeah, again, just to recap, it's basically about knowing what you're doing, knowing what you're up against, and knowing what your customer is comfortable with, if applicable. If you're doing it on your own property or what have you, then obviously you are the customer. But yeah, just being aware of what might get you in trouble and how you can avoid that. Hopefully some of the things I mentioned today are helpful. But any other questions? All right. Well, looks like I'm getting to about the 10-minute till mark. Nobody's trying to kick me off yet. It's probably because we had our technical difficulties at the beginning. But if there's no other questions, I'm going to go smoke a cigarette. Thanks, everybody. Your donations are much appreciated. I really do hope that this helps you guys out. If there's any further questions, or if anybody wants to pick my brain about any sort of construction techniques or anything like that, you can get a hold of me at josh@libertyrestorationproject.org. I can also, my friend who had the nightmare problems with the building inspectors in his house, he also offered to talk to anybody about it. You know, he's really passionate about the subject at this point. So if you're interested in talking to him and getting that whole story, and maybe getting a few pieces of advice that I might have missed or forgot to mention, please do let me know. Again, you can get a hold of me at josh@libertyrestorationproject.org. Thank you very much. You guys have a good one.